Hello and welcome to episode 27 of MMO Weekly, presented as always by METSmerizedOnline.com. I'm your host, Sal Manzo, and this week we're joined once again, friend of the program, basically the third man of this deal, Jacob RESNICK. Jacob, how we doing this week, man?
Doing good. I was gonna say the graphic we had up before, it said special guest, and I think by now the luster has worn off. Just to
No,
just to
you're
just to guess.
you're part of the MMO Weekly crew here now, right? No more special guests. Obviously, no Mike this week. We'll catch him on the next episode, but too many things happening in Metsland over the last few days to stay put here. Obviously, we'll start with the big news last night. Mets re-signed Brandon Nimmo, 8 years, $160 million. They get their center fielder back, their lead on base guy. I just want to get your initial reactions to the signing and what you think, the Mets, get here now with Nimmo and his age 30 season and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, from just a pure Mets fan excitement standpoint, it's great. It was pretty much what they had to do, and it seemed like something they wanted to do. We're kind of on the fence about, and then it got down to it, and Steve Cohen just gave the go ahead, according to the reports of how it went down, just to get that done. From a financial standpoint, 8 years is kind of a lot longer than everyone was expecting. I think people were predicting 5, maybe 6 at the most, and 8 was a little shocking. But as we've seen time and again, when you're dealing with the top free agents, you're not paying them for what they're going to do the last 2-3 years of these
Right.
long-term contracts. You're paying for them for their production now, and the extra years is kind of just the extra security that the players are looking for. Um, but yeah, I mean, you looked at the center field market as a whole, and after Nimmo, it was pretty much non-existent. On the trade market, Brian Reynolds is with the Pirates is a name that's been heavily rumored that he asked for a trade. Pirates said they're not going to move him, but you can't always take that at face value. Obviously that would have required prospects, and for a player of his caliber, probably would have required something like Brett Beatty and quite a few other guys. So all they had to do with Brandon Nimmo was hand over the money, and they did it, and they've got their guy, and it's gonna be fun to have him back for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know. I think everybody was shocked at the 8 years when they saw that. I think that money wise, it wasn't a shock. It seemed like it was reported he was looking around the 160 million mark. But as far as flexibility goes, at least, obviously, 8 years is a long time. Like you said, last couple of years of the deal, obviously, you're probably not going to expect too much. But from an AAV standpoint, now you go from a 5-6 year deal will be close to $30 million to now, those extra 2 years pumping it down to 20 million a year gives them a lot more payroll flexibility to continue to add. Which at this point, I don't know how they could, but it sounds like Steve Cohen just is completely all in, which we'll talk about. But yeah, great signing for the Mets. You talked about the center field market in general, and outside of him, it was a total drop off. So there's really no one else that they could kind of of his caliber, I would say, to replace. So they got their guy. They did what they had to do. That lineup looks completely different without him at the top of the lineup. So it's great that they have him. They have him for his prime years now. It's also nice to see the Mets develop and then keep a homegrown player. You don't get a lot of that with them position player wise. So it was cool to see that. He's built for New York. He likes the stage. Hopefully he stays healthy. Obviously, he's had some neck issues, health issues in the past, but hopefully he can kind of put those behind him at least for the next couple of years while this window's open. And ready to roll here. Obviously, got a lot of money. But it's nice to see guys stay. Obviously, last week or so didn't have that with someone else. We didn't even talk about him. He's gone now. But good to see someone, have loyalty there. Obviously, money talks, but it's a big get for them. And obviously, they made another move yesterday. They also signed David Robertson to a 1-year, $10 million deal. We'll talk about it more, but just want to get your initial thoughts on that, especially for a guy that they tried trading for last year. And now, instead of giving up prospects for half a season, you give him a check, you have him for a whole year now. So just wonder what you think of the Robertson signing too.
Yeah, I mean that one kind of came out of nowhere. One, because it was like a few minutes after the Nimmo signing was reported, but it also just he wasn't a guy that they were connected to. At least since the offseason started. You mentioned they were interested in trading for him at the deadline, but there wasn't really any talk about them being in on him as a free agent. But I mean, a solid move. Obviously, we know that they lost pretty much their entire bullpen, and they started by bringing Edwin Diaz back, and that was another move you had to do. But you also have a pretty sizable hole with Adam Ottavino leaving. Seth Lugo, Trevor Williams, who they were rumored to be in on, and then he, reportedly agreed with the Nationals on a 2-year deal. So they had to start piecing together the bullpen and past the smaller moves on the margins that they've made so far. So he's just a guy who's gotten outs his whole career, and he dealt with injuries, a couple of years ago, and missed a large chunk of time, and he's come back, and he's really worked pretty hard to get back to the point that he's at now. So guy who we know can pitch in New York. He did it for a long time on the other side. So good clubhouse guy. As far as reports have gone over the years. So just a solid signing, and on a 1-year deal, you definitely take it.
Yeah, absolutely. As setup guys go, I think that's great. Like you said, he can handle New York, which is a plus. He had the Tommy John a couple of years ago, but he had a great year this past year. You would think, like joking like Justin Verlander, right? He's got a new arm, so to speak. So that's good there. But you mentioned Seth Lugo, right? The bullpen wise, are you surprised at all that like the Mets haven't heard anything as far as the Mets reaching out at all? I would assume. There's probably a lot of suitors for him, and maybe even the starting pitching market, which he might want to go back and do. But I am a little surprised that there hasn't been any talk at all of trying to bring Lugo back, considering, like you said, most of that bullpen still needs a lot of work here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not shocking that he's being, looked at by his reported suitors as a starter, and
Right.
that's why the Mets aren't interested, because they've had him as a reliever, they've tried him as a starter, it hasn't really worked out, so maybe they're just not really willing to go back to that experiment. And just he's obviously you associate him with the Mets because he's been here for his entire career, but
Right.
he might not be a guy that Billy Epler and his people are too keen on when it comes to making a longer term commitment. So it's not super shocking, and if they do lose him, which it looks like they probably will,
Right.
it's not a huge loss, but they have to fill that hole somehow, and Robertson's a step. But like I said, if you're saying Robertson's replacing Lugo, then who's replacing Ottavino, and who's replacing the Williams production? They did make the trade for Brooks Raley this week,
Right.
which
Right.
was kind of interesting. Another one that
Mm-hmm.
was kind of actually it kind of was out of nowhere, but also there had been a couple rumblings going back a couple weeks about the Mets and Rays being connected on a trade. So they're starting to piece everything together, and I think it'll be a new look bullpen outside of Edwin Diaz, but
Right.
should be an interesting one.
Now, in the case of Adam Ottavino, I'm just curious what you think about as far as obviously tremendous year last year, great bounce back year. Someone that you would think, he's a little older in age, maybe they could, bring back on a 1-year deal, something like that. Maybe wants to continue to try and win here. But do you think would you be nervous at all? Just volatility in general, year to year relievers. He had such a good year, and obviously he's a guy in his late 30s, had come off before that, a couple of not stellar years. Would you be wary to try and bring him back on not a bigger deal, so to speak, because he's late 30s, whatever. But just, do you think that they maybe got their max value out of him, and someone that you try and stay away from because you think it might not, that magic might not last for him, so to speak? I'm just curious what you think, Ottavino as far as trying to bring him back for this year.
Yeah, I don't think there were any red flags in terms of anything that we saw last year that would lead you to believe that his success was unsustainable. I mean, he kind of did what he's done his whole career, and his the metrics on his pitches were the same as they had been, and I'm a little surprised we haven't really heard any, as far as I know, real rumors about him being connected with other teams, let alone the
Right.
Mets. I think, like you said, with his age and his performance, he's probably looking for something a little longer in
Right.
terms of the years, and teams probably aren't going to want to go. I would assume he's maybe looking for like a 3-year deal, just based on the on the production, but for someone at his age, that's probably not something that teams are racing after him to
Right.
give him. If I just had to guess, I mean, no, not based on anything, like 1 year plus an option is
Right.
kind of
Right.
what I would expect he would get.
Yep.
And if you're the Mets, I don't think there's any reason not to do that. And like you mentioned with Nimmo before, just like him wanting to come back, I think Ottavino was a guy that just enjoyed playing in New York. Like
Right.
he's done it with the Yankees, he enjoyed playing with the Mets. Um, and it's just kind of emblematic of the culture they've built with Buck and Steve Cohen and Billy Epler. That guys wanna be here. Actually, I was curious and I looked it up before the show. I think there have been 59 either official signings or reported signings
Right.
so far, and the Mets are one of 3 teams that have brought back 2
Wow.
of their own free agents. The Yankees brought back
Hmm.
Judge and Rizzo, and the Padres brought back Nick Martinez and Robert Suarez. So
Right.
the Mets brought back Nimmo. They brought back Edwin Diaz, and
Hmm.
technically they have a third. They brought back Tommy Hunter on a minor
Right.
league contract. So guys want to play here, and I wouldn't be shocked if they circle back with Ottavino if he's still on the market, into January.
Yeah, no, it might be one of they signed him right before spring training last year, right? One of those last minute things, like almost like a veteran minimum kind of thing, and he obviously outperformed. I might see the same thing with him there, signed last minute, but you touched on as far as players want to play here, right? In the last few days, we've seen the Cohen regime, Epler regime, spend a lot of money, and be aggressive. Um, I'm just kind of curious. Do you think that Cohen tax, whatever they called it. Do you think that, and it's obviously pure speculation, but like, do you think that lit a fire under Cohen a little bit to be like, I know you put this in here, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to spend no matter what. You can put whatever taxes, whatever you want, but like, I'm here committed to winning. And do you think like that players see that? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how involved players are with like, understand the luxury tax and all that kind of stuff, the front office stuff. But I would imagine players seeing what the Mets are doing spending wise and showing the commitment, it's got to make players, I would assume, want to come here even more now, even more than last year, right?
Yeah, I mean Cohen's a competitive guy, and I think we've learned that over the 2 years that he's owned the team already. Just with the way his comments when he does interviews and with his tweets, like he's like he's he's like a quiet, um not quiet, but just like he's kind of like that underlying competitive spirit, within him. He's just kind of like on the outside, he seems calm, but he's gonna pounce and he's gonna get what he wants. And when you have as much money as he does, I
Right.
think Anthony DeComo tweeted that the signings they've committed to this offseason is like 2% of his net worth. So like, yeah, it's a lot of money, but it's nothing compared to what he can afford. And he's he comes from the finance background where that's very cutthroat,
Right.
and
Right.
he's even within baseball, like he's tried to buy the Mets in the past and
Right.
the Dodgers and all of that. And he wants to win. So it's money is not an object, and it's really paying off so far with the Mets because they really had no other choice. And
Right. Right.
when you're trying to build a sustainable winner and a sustainable franchise like they're trying to, you have to limit the trading of prospects and
Right.
players. And
Right.
um, he's had to spend just to keep them at least at the level that they were
Right.
last year with
Right.
bringing back these guys, if not, spend even more. So it's wild. I'm sure you can agree as someone who's followed the Mets for a long time, just to see the Mets in this position where they're the biggest spenders in the league. But it's fun. It's fun. It's fun to follow for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the biggest thing that it seems like here and after Edwin Diaz signed, Justin Verlander, and now Brandon Nimmo, it sounds like Cohen, gets involved in the sense of trying to build relationships. It sounds like, with these three guys in particular, that we've heard about Cohen building relationships, with their families, trying to, make them part of the Mets family, show that he cares about them as people, that sort of thing. And again, obviously money talks, you open the checkbook, that's ultimately what matters, whatever. But it seems like he does also do a good job of trying to connect with his star players and make them feel like, they're not just a number on a spreadsheet, so to speak. They're, part of a family here. Obviously, it's performance-based, all that jazz, but it seems like he's done a really good job of important players, making them feel welcome and making them feel like, this is a family that they want to be around.
Yeah. And, there are reports that, or not reports, he did host Edwin Diaz at his house. It might have been in August or something like that. Diaz and his family, and I'm sure they discussed his upcoming free agency. And then you saw like Diaz signed even before he was allowed to sign with any other team. He signed,
right.
back with the Mets, and he said it was the number one priority for him to come back. And that doesn't just happen. We see guys, chase the money and go, to teams where you wouldn't have associated with them in the past. And like, it makes sense. These guys are, humans, and they want to set their family up for success for generations. And it's understandable why they'd want to chase the money. But if you, create that culture, guys want to come back. They want to play for you. And it's definitely exciting that that's the thing that they're building, and it's, going to continue for years to come.
Absolutely. And, it makes things a little harder when the Braves and the Phillies are as good as they are in this division. But, they're not backing down. Even with that challenge, right? Those two teams adding the way they do and as good as they are, he's not backing down. He's gone more all in, obviously, this offseason. Just curious, to see like what other moves they make, because I really don't think they're done. But we'll speculate on that in a minute. The Mets also had one more signing this week. They signed Jose Quintana to a 2-year, $26 million deal to round out the back end of that rotation. Thought that was great. Guy that doesn't give up a lot of home runs, and especially with the teams that I mentioned that the Mets play, it would be great to have a guy who keep the ball in the park. He makes 30 starts a year. I think he pitched about 175 innings or 160 something innings last year with 32 starts. Takes the ball every fifth day. He's a pro's pro. Just wondering what you think of that signing as, rounding out the back end of the rotation.
Yeah, another solid one that we didn't really see coming because he wasn't connected to the Mets, but we knew they were looking for those depth arms to fill out the rotation, and he fits the bill. Like you said, he's consistent. He's durable. I think he's been in the majors for over a decade. He's only been on the IL a couple times, and they were short things. So he's had a long bill of health, and he gets results. I mean, he's not going to go up and have number one front of the rotation stuff, but he's going to give you quality innings, and it's a good contract too for 26 for 2 years, and just building out that depth. And I think they could use one more pitcher, whether that's Kodai Senga, whether that's any of Chris Bassett, and any other starters they've been connected to. I think they definitely are looking to add one more piece. But when you came into the offseason and you had Scherzer and Carlos Carrasco, and then a bunch of question marks, David Peterson, Tyler McGill, Joey Lucchesi, who we haven't seen in forever. It's good to kind of push those guys, no disrespect to them, but push them down the depth chart in terms of who you're relying on. And it's good to have those guys as, your sixth, seventh, eighth starters in the rotation. So yeah, definitely a good signing with Quintana.
Yeah, and that was a good pivot there as far as talking about another pitcher. I don't love Cookie as the number 3 starter. I'd like some more stability between the two, behind the two older big horses. That's my thing. You mentioned Senga, you mentioned Bassett. For you, obviously the Mets have been super linked to Senga over the whole time in free agency now, especially the last few days. It sounds like they might make it another big push. Obviously Bassett's a guy that was here. that's still on the market, but I would assume at this point his contract's going to look somewhere around the $100 million range if the way things are going. I'm just wondering if you had a preference between those two guys, if the Mets were to sign one, if there's one that you particularly like more than the other or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't even think I'd be able to give you a good answer because Senga's such a question mark.
Right,
Like,
right.
we just don't know how he's gonna translate. And I talked about it the last time I was with you on the show. Just like the the transition from Japan to the
Right,
US, like it's so inconsistent, and it's just dependent on the guy, and there's no way to know until you pay him and he comes
right,
over, and you see. It definitely seems like the Mets are focusing in on him as their
right,
guy, and it's just going to come down to which team Senga
right.
picks because there's a lot of suitors in on him. So I'd like to believe that if the Mets are as interested in him as they are, that they do have pretty good conviction that he'll come over and translate well. So I think his upside definitely
Hmm.
would put him on top of Bassett, but on the other hand, you know what you're getting with Bassett. Um, and as the offseason goes on, I'm not sure exactly where Bassett's market is right now,
Right.
but definitely probably get him on a cheaper contract. Just if it comes down to are they looking at the money for that spot, but then
Right.
again, when you get to this point, when you spent as much
Right.
as they
Right.
have, there's no reason to stop and stop to cut your spending here and there. So um, I think all the signs are pointing towards them getting Senga, but
Yeah.
um, we'll see how that develops, and I'm just interested from a baseball perspective to
Of
see
course.
him and how he comes over.
2.1 at talking about Senya, Jolly Olive put out a great breakdown video of him. I think it was the other day. Just breaking down Senya fastball, forkball, forkball splitter, whatever you want to call it. Four seam plays. It sounds like his only bugaboo at times he can lose the strike zone. Walks can be a bit of an issue. But the stuff seems like it's great, even if he's, even though he's really a two-pitch pitcher, they think it's going to translate pretty well. It'll be interesting there. And the other thing I speculate on, obviously it's a year away, whatever. We keep hearing about Shohei Ohtani. Next year, Shohei Ohtani, Mets going to be all in. We're a year from now. Anything can happen. Doesn't matter. But I wonder how much of a factor that is for the Mets to try and sign a guy like Senya to then try and lure a guy like Ohtani next year. I don't know if there's any complete speculation. I don't know if there's any truth to that or anything. But obviously, Japanese pitcher, those games play in Japan when they start, so that's more money that way, more eyeballs, things like that. I'm just wondering. Again, it's a year out. Who knows if that's the case or not? But I wonder if that's in the back of their heads at all. To maybe they think that it can give them some sort of leg up and sign an Ohtani eventually. But we probably got to wait for that. We should probably get through this season first.
That'll be on episode 127 of
Exactly.
MMO Weekly.
But listen, the good thing is, right, talking about this kind of stuff, the speculation, it's because the Mets are all in and they're spending and they're doing whatever they can to win. So ultimately, whether they go down that road or not, or it's somebody else, whatever, they're going to be in on all these guys. They continue to be. And it's, like you said, I've been watching the Mets a long time. I don't think we've ever seen it like this, especially like just the media in general. It seems like there's a different tone now. There's not as much of that LOL Mets mentality,
Yeah,
especially with tough
haven't heard
season
that
now.
one in a while.
No, because when you have an owner that's all in like this, willing to spend, and winning's a priority, you can't really hate that much. You know what I mean? I don't know if they're going to win 100 games again this year, but I guess with that, do you even, with the way the schedule is going to be next year, the balanced schedule, seeing what the Phillies did, winning 87 games, just getting hot into October. Does it matter at this point, winning 100 games or winning 85 games? You just got to get in and be hot at the right time.
I mean, I think it matters from the
Yeah,
perspective that it if anything, it at least builds the competitive fire within the
sure.
clubhouse, and I think at least with guys like Scherzer and Verlander, kind of as the two veterans leading the pitching staff and the team as a whole, like they just want to step on your throats.
Right, right.
And yeah, I think they're there still is something to it. But it's a fair point that everyone's 0-0 when you start the playoffs, and it's just the first team to make it all the way, and who like you said, who gets hot at the right time. And it's kind of random. Like you could say it's random because
Right.
anyone can win on any given day, but
Right.
you want to build your team and give yourself the best chance, to put yourself in the best position to win. And
Sure.
you can't do that without the best players. So I definitely not that this is what you're suggesting, but I don't think teams are going to pivot to we're okay with building a team that's in that 85
Right. No.
to 90 win range. If anything, it probably is gonna, you would hope, at least inspire the
Right.
teams that are even below that.
Sure.
The 75 to 80 win teams
Right. Right.
to push even further to get to the 85 to 90, which that's great for the competitive balance around the sport
Yeah.
as a whole. But yeah, it's just kind of funny the way
No.
this past season worked out.
And I'll clarify. I didn't mean it as far as spending less. What I meant was, I look at the Mets, how things ended for them last year. It felt like they got beaten down trying to win that division, and it felt like they kind of crawled into that wild card series. And more so is what I'm saying is, do you want to grind for those 100 wins and grind to win that division and essentially burn yourself out come playoff time, or do you want to do what you can? Play it, get healthy. Again, 12 teams make the playoffs now. Get that wild card and get healthy and hot at the right time. But I hear what you're saying. It's a mix of things, right? It all depends on each year. Just so happened that two teams last year won 100 games in the same division. Doesn't happen a lot, unless I guess you're the Dodgers and the Giants last year. But no, I hear what you're saying. It's the balanced schedule next year is going to be a big thing too. I think I don't know how much that's going to lessen division play and win the division and things like that. It'll certainly be interesting, but hopefully it'll be good for an older team like the Mets. Maybe keep them a little fresher, so that would be good. And other than that, kind of end the show there. I guess obviously we talked to kind of everything that's been going on. Wild week. We assume there's going to be more over the next days, weeks, months. Hopefully it's all sooner rather than later. But until then, we'll keep everybody updated. Jacob, thanks for coming on the show again. I don't know if I need to thank you anymore at this point. Just like
I just show up when you.
Yeah,
tell
we
me
have
to.
now. It's just show up every week. Whatever. No, this was great. Appreciate everything. This was great insight. Obviously, if anything else comes up between now and the next episode, the Mets sign, we'll keep you posted. But until then, let's go Mets.